Hey, what's up guys, TechTine here and I'm back again with a brand new video. So I made a video in which I talked about my 6 months experience about the Galaxy S25 FE, where I focused mainly on the things that I like about it. So I'm here making sort of a kind of devil's advocate where I talk about the cons of the Galaxy S25 now that this phone has been out for a little bit over 6 months. And this has just been my perspective as someone who has been using the phone on and off for the past 6 months. So the first major category that I want to speak on here is within the design itself. Now, there's nothing wrong with this design. It uses somewhat of premium materials, right? So a kind of glass or matte glass back, metal sides. So somewhat of premium materials that have been used on this device. However, my problem is with just the way this phone looks. I mean, it just is boring at the end of the day. Samsung has not really been changing the design a lot on this kind of S25, or even if you look at the S24 and even the S23, they follow a very similar design perspective. So the design is boring, and that's really something that I think will just steer buyers away from upgrading if you have the previous generation. Now, the next thing on my list is the speaker quality. Now, there's no doubt that this display is honestly one of the best displays that you can get for such a price point. However, the speaker quality does not match the display quality, and that's something that you have to keep an eye out. And I'm not saying that it's a bad speaker, it's definitely a good speaker, but for the display quality, it just doesn't mix, it doesn't really match it. So the speaker is not the best thing in the world, and it does not get as crisp or as consistent with the quality. So it does lack depth, it does lack rich sounds, and the haptic feedback on this device in general is weak compared to the competitors that are in the same price bracket. So not necessarily sort of a deal breaker, but something that you have to keep an eye out. The other thing that I want to speak on, it has to do with the performance, mainly the software experience. So Samsung's One UI definitely has improved, but after months of use, I feel like the pre-installed apps still, and that's not really just the S25 FE problem, that's a bloatware problem that Samsung still needs to figure out. So there's no reason for them to have their own browser when you have Chrome, especially you have an Android system that works. Now their AI features are okay. They're not really the best on this device, but this phone is not really heavily involved in AI technology. Maybe in the S26 FE we'll get a better phone with a more AI features. The other thing is the battery life. So now this phone's maximum battery capacity did drop a little bit faster than I expected, but you need to realize that at the end of the day, if you have 120 Hz refresh enabled all the time like I do, the battery health is going to degrade. Now, fast charging on here is fine for the most part. It uses 45 watts of fast charging, and it does have a decent battery life, but it could be better, and hopefully we'll see that within the next generation. Now, the other category that I want to speak on is in the camera category, and the overall camera experience is good. However, just so I can be a little bit more nitpicky, in nighttime photography, the camera can feel muddy and washed. Even night mode, when you do use it on this device, is very freaking aggressive. So that's something to also note. The autofocus on this phone is also inconsistent at times, so also keep a note in that. And the video stabilization is pretty decent, but it's not really industry leading, and I didn't really expect that. Overall though, the camera still takes good pictures but not consistent pictures, and for a price at this point, I expected a little bit better, to be honest with you. Okay, so I want to speak on the value versus price. So 6 months later, this phone is still priced, if you still want to get it brand new, it will still be $649. So Samsung did not drop the price on this device at all. I feel like if the MSRP by the way is $649, but if Samsung were to drop the price to around $449 or $549, it makes a more feasible choice, especially now that the iPhone 17e, while not bringing many changes, has came out. It still is $599 for 256 gigabyte storage. And by the way, the storage only is 128, the base. So I do wish that it was 256 as far as the base storage. We have been seeing that consistent 256 across of the budget market at a phone at this price point. So with that being said, I'm not really entirely saying that this is kind of a phone that I would steer away from. I would say this, for $649, it still is an overall solid device. I think in some ways it's better than the S25 flagship just because it provides a smaller screen in the S25 end, and the battery life on it is not really that good compared to the S25 FE. So this is definitely a solid alternative. You're just not going to get the highest end performance that you would expect from a flagship device, which is expected. So with that being said, I do want to see your guys. I do want to hear your guys' opinions. Let me know in the comments below. Tell me the things that you're not really a big fan of when it comes to the S25 FE. I would love to hear your guys' comments below. With that being said, I do want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will definitely catch you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching.